Happy Tuesday afternoon. As Annalena said, you can turn your videos on. Later, we'll have some breakout rooms, and if you want to rename yourself, you can go to those three dots in the upper right of your video, and also add pronouns. So today we'll share some background on these grants and how they're connected to the overall strategy of the network, and then some of the details, try to answer questions, and then we'll take your questions after that. And then we'll set up some breakout rooms where you can talk with fellow members about your ideas for your grants, even just to bounce those off each other, or maybe something will come up you want to do together. We just thought it would be good to talk with your peers about the opportunity after we give the information and answer your questions. And hi, Maura, good to see you. Everyone will hear from a past grantee in a little bit. Thanks for coming. So these grants are through the Food Systems Leadership Network, if you're new to it, is a national peer learning community that connects current and emerging leaders, strengthens individual and collective leadership capacity, and fosters collaboration across communities. And our vision for the network is all these people linked together, feeling a shared purpose, learning together, and the network as a whole advancing social justice locally, regionally, and nationally. So happening across all those levels. And the goal of the network is to equip members with the resources, the relationships, and the power to reach that. And so the activation grants are a key part of that, and one of the more member-led things that we have, where you're proposing what you want to do, what you think is best for the network, and sharing your expertise with the network. If you go to the next slide. So these support members to work together to create a new activity, to lead an activity you already know how to do and just want to offer to a bigger audience, to conduct a workshop, and other services. It's open to creative ideas, but the goals of the grants are to enhance and amplify expertise within the FSLN. So both like amplifying your expertise, like getting it out in front of the whole network, as well as for people that participate in whatever you're offering, enhancing their expertise, advancing racial equity throughout the network, and that's both through how we select the grants, how we've structured them, and then the activities themselves. We hope that there's a component of that people are advancing how they approach racial equity in their work and centering it more thoughtfully in their work. Also, another opportunity is to provide community care. We hear throughout activities when we're debriefing or when we get really in depth with people, just like people are spread thin, and taking time to reconnect to your purpose, to why you got into this work, taking care of yourself can help you do the work better and help your impact be better. You can be, I know when I'm in that state, I'm just kinder to work with. So community care is another thing that we are putting out this year, and building relationships throughout. Everything we do, we think is built on relationships. And I think with that, I'll hand it over to Annalena.
All right, thanks, Andrew. So this is the second year of the activation grants that we posted through the FSLN. And this year we have a total of $20,000 available and anticipate hosting or supporting proposals up to $5,000. Last year, that range was pretty similar, between $2,000 to $5,000 for each of the grants, and we anticipate that continuing through this year. There is a budget template that's on the website that we'll ask y'all to download and include in your application, just to itemize what the funding is for. So it's a pretty simple budget for this amount, but it helps me think through how to use the funds. The application timeline is pretty long this year, so we'll open at the end of the week and stay open for about 2 months. And part of that is to allow space for the idea to develop and the activity that you're thinking to really bring it to life. A large part of these grants, or a core part of their essence, is really to encourage member collaborations, whether between members working together or with other organizations in your community or network that you might not have an opportunity to work closely with. Having this bigger timeline might enable some more of that relationship development to happen before the end of the deadline for the applications. Because it is a longer deadline, the activities, as you're thinking through when you might want to deliver these, we have the grant activities occurring between the beginning of December and the end of August next year. Where that falls will be based upon, like your schedules and that with FSLN and seeing how they can match up. But that's kind of the gist of the logistics of the grants. Eligibility here, I know that there are a lot of organizations within the network that are mission-driven enterprises, and unfortunately, because of our grant mechanisms and the requirements that we have to follow, we're only able to support 501c3 nonprofits or other fiscally sponsored organizations. So individuals can't apply, and again, for-profit are unable as well. We're encouraging everyone who applies to also have a profile on the network. So sign up on the portal. It is very easy if you're not already part of the network in that capacity. And we'll be, following up with links to make sure that you can easily do that. Eligibility as well, and this is all written out in the evaluation criteria, which we'll talk about in a minute. But making sure that the proposed activity or proposed project meets at least one of the grant goals that Andrew set out before. And you'll have an opportunity within the application to select which goal your project is meeting. And then, with any grant, unfortunately, there are allowable expenses and unallowable ones. If you have specific questions around these details, please feel free to reach out and ask us. A lot of the unallowable expenses are really around, again, just the grant requirements that we have as we re-grant these funds. So purchasing of software and hardware, direct lobbying is unallowable. But for, we've gotten some questions in the past around staff time and meeting expenses, and seeing those as great opportunities for these grants to support, to make sure that, those are oftentimes what's not supported through grants. It's really around like programming, and we want to kind of shift that a little bit through this to really enable that staff time support and LOE. All right, quickly with the evaluation criteria and process. Again, this is all spelled out in greater detail on the website, but the questions within the survey or within the application will directly relate to all of these. And we really want to make sure that the proposed activities are aligning with the overall grant goals, as well as some of the specific ones, that there is a direct impact and benefit to the network, and in what form that takes. That's up to you to let us know how your activity will benefit the network itself. We'd encourage you all to consider if the proposal addresses and advances racial equity, either in its development or implementation. And then making sure that this project is feasible, that you are the right organization, you're the right collaboration to do this. The budget works, the time frame works, personnel is all matching to the effort of the activity. New this year, which we're really excited about, is to bring in past grant recipients to help us in the review process. So we have a number of folks from last year who have volunteered to be part of that process. And we'll be following a set of guidelines and scoring matrix that matches specifically the questions that we ask in the survey or in the application. And those questions are up on our website right now, but then the application itself will open September 1st, so this Friday. And then next week, we'll send it out in our FSLN email or newsletter. So what kind of projects might be supported through the FSLN Activation Grants? We're looking for activities and projects that, add value and benefit to the network. Here are just a few examples of different activities that we've heard in the past might be that members are asking for or wanting. So regional meetups, consider if there are groups in your community or in your region that need to come together for strategic planning. Maybe these funds could support some elements of that. Panel style conversations, really getting at that sharing the learning and amplifying expertise within the network. The networking opportunities, so like maybe you'll have really cool ideas for how you want to meet other people in the network and how you want to work together. Like these grants are an awesome way to really help catalyze that. And then, yeah, Andrew had mentioned before, community care and self-care, developing different tools and templates. If you've learned something really cool through some of your programming that you want to take to the next level or spread out with it across the network. Those are, again, examples of different projects that would be supported through these grants. Last year, we actually, I'm going to hand this over to Andrew to get into this slide. So thank you. And then we'll have questions right after this.
All right, thanks for that, Annalena. So these are some examples of the projects from last year. There was a storytelling training that was over 3 parts that gave people a framework on how to do storytelling. And then they offered mini grants to people to implement that afterwards. There was a FSLN member collaborative thinking about a new podcast series for food systems leaders. There were also folks that collaborated on a new coaching and strategy framework, trying to think about how to support executive directors. And then there was also a series on 2 organizations that had gone through significant work on racial equity over the past 3 years, I believe. One that had done it as the organization started, and one that was established and had to rework things. And so that series was called Collective Wayfinding. And Maura Ackerman, who's with the Syracuse Onondaga Food Systems Alliance, is here to share. And if you could just share a little bit about what the impact for you all was. We hope this is a different type of grant than your typical one, so how this specific support from the FSLN impacted you in the organization.
Yeah, thanks, Andrew. So first I'll say that this was like just such a great and easy collaboration with you all. It was really fun, I think, for our team to be collaborating in this way. But a couple of things that I thought were really unique about this workshop and just like collaborating with FSLN to do this work. So you all, when you received our application and one from San Diego, saw some synergies between our 2 applications and actually sort of match made between us and created a series that made each of our components more powerful than it might have been. And so I think that, I think there's something very special about that, a lot of grantors traditionally wouldn't do. They would sort of be like, okay, you're operating in your silo project and like, check, done. But like thinking about how the network itself can add value to each of these projects, I think was really useful. I think for us also, what we proposed was really a conversation. It was the first, we were thinking about a lot of these things internally, but it was really a testing ground for us to figure out how to talk about some of the work that we put into founding our organization with some, racial equity frameworks, some ways where we had missteps along the way, and to talk really openly about that. And it was, a friendly testing ground for that kind of both the facilitation tactics around that and the content, which we've since, represented in different contexts, including at a recent New York State summit with food policy councils. And so, like being able to be in friendly company with others who are thinking in a like-minded way about these things, and have that comfort level was great. We got to practice a bunch of facilitation techniques, including having both a BIPOC and a white emotional support person on our calls, so we could do breakout sessions and sort of, have folks be able to react to what we were saying based on their own identities, or have a private conversation over chat with those folks. So they were trained social workers who we compensated to be part of our call. And then also had an honoraria for our BIPOC presenters as well. And then just again, on the budget side of things, I think one of the things that was really special, in addition to sort of supporting those tactical things, was that the way that we structured our budget, some of the funds wound up coming back to SOFSA in ways that they became flexible income for us to use without some of the stipulations, right? It's more of a fee for service type grant, as opposed to show me your receipts for X, Y, and Z expense. And that was really helpful for us, especially like what that has funded has been food for our convenings for this whole year. And as folks who are primarily USDA funded know, it's a really hard thing to fund through USDA monies. And as we all know, breaking bread together has incredible value. And so being able to serve food because that income came to us has been really valuable. And I think that's it. I don't know if there are questions, or Andrew, if there was anything you wanted me to cover that I didn't.
No, that was perfect. We'll have time for questions later too, where people can ask for us or for you, but it's great to hear that it's covered the food for y'all this year. I didn't know that, so
Oh yeah.
now I'm using it. But I think from there, were we going to go to questions, Annalena? Okay. So yeah, just opening up to y'all. Anything that was unclear or anything you want to hear more about before you have time to think about your plans?
Part 2 of
Well, if there aren't any questions at the moment, that's fine, because we have 2 months of the application window, and we will be hosting several more follow-up calls to, I do see your hand raised, Indy, but we'll be doing 2 more follow-up calls or so to continue the conversation and see if we can seed some of those collaborations that Maura was mentioning, that occurred after the application. Okay, Indy, I see your hand raised. You want to go ahead and unmute?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you all for facilitating this and making this happen. It's always wonderful to see community coming around supporting each other, not just through funds, which is obviously helpful, but I feel also it's helpful to have just this kind of community, right, that really cares about something systemically, right? Evolving things systemically. I 2 things I wanted to bring up. The food thing that just came up. That I just need to share, being that I'm a Sikh, actually it's pronounced sick, but I don't want to say like I'm sick. But if wherever you guys are in the country, I encourage you, if you ever are hungry or if you need access to food, or even if you want folks to come in and share food, just go to any of the Sikh temples. We come from a indigenous farming community in India, and food is really important in our culture. So if you or anybody wants that, we will always be willing to feed and support any community that's doing this work. So just throwing that out there, you don't have to change your religion or believe in the religion. It's just really important part of us nourishing ourselves if we're going to nourish others. It's so important. Okay, and then my question, I noticed that the funding starts, the window to use the funding starts in December to August, if I remember properly. But what if I'm working on food systems work in Hawaii, specifically in Big Island. I mean, obviously now we know it's important in all the islands, but the neighbor islands really are struggling with food justice. And so there's a couple of things that are happening and percolating for November of this year, and we're looking to do something, and I would be probably applying for something in November. Is that doable? Like, is it possible to use the funds in November if we do end up winning these funds, whatever you want to call it, getting the grants? Can we allocate it in November?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that it wouldn't be the beginning of November, because we will have that decision-making process right in the beginning. I'd say the soonest that we could get back to you with responses would be by the middle of November. But I don't think we'll be able to necessarily do that before December 1st, like logistically wise. However, I guess my suggestion to you would be, in the application, we can add, like in that other section, say like it would be preferable to get these funds by this date so that we can activate. But if that wouldn't work for you and you wouldn't then be able to use them in the other timeline, just make note of that, and we can take that into consideration as we're doing the reviews.
Thank you, Annalena. Appreciate that.
Yeah, for sure. All right, are there other questions here? I saw in the chat from Elias, and that, yes, Andrew, that's a great idea. we'll put something on there to continue the collaboration offline. Lorena, I see that you came off mute. Do you have a question to share?
No, actually, I was just fiddling with my screen. Sorry.
Okay. No, don't be sorry. It's a beautiful background for your image. So, all right. Well, if there are no more questions in this part, then I'm going to stop sharing, or before I stop sharing my screen, I will move us into breakout rooms to do exactly what we've been talking about, to start some of that collaborating, brainstorming, like, so that you all on the call can get to know other network members who are considering these funds, and use this opportunity to kind of bounce ideas off of each other and just start that brainstorming. So we'll